everyone! Today we are going to continue our Node.js series and we are going to create a login and user authentication. But before we start, remember to subscribe our channel with the red button down there and to turn on the notifications and to give us thumbs up. Hello everyone and welcome in the fourth lesson of our Node.js course. Today we are going to build the logic for the login and user authentication. So make sure you have the code from the lesson 3. If you don't have it, you can take a look at our GitHub and get it, or you can start from lesson 1 and join us here. And let's open it and let's start. All the resources for this video you will find below.
Okay, so let's open the code from the previous lesson, and the first thing that we are going to do is to update our user entity. So let's go to our user folder, let's open user entity, and here we have to add 2 lines of code because we need to create a connection between our user and accounts. So let's add has many accounts and connected by user ID, and our public value in user will be accounts. And remember that we have to import accounts here on the top. It's the accounts entity. Yeah. Okay, so the first point is done. It should look like this, and now we can go to our user service and start creating the login function. But before that, let's update one thing here in the registration function, register function. Inside the JVT sign, we will change our user because we want to pass only 3 values: ID, username and email, and not the whole user. Okay, when it's done, let's save. And we can start creating our login function just below the register function. So let's start by defining it. And we will pass credentials here. You can declare the type, but I'll put any. And it will return the promise object. Okay, and we will start by getting our user with the username as in credentials from the database. So let's use users, find one. Where username is credentials username. Great. And we don't want to return values like created at and updated at, so let's exclude it. Great. And right now we might have the case that user won't be found, and we need to handle it somehow. That's why I'm going to create a conditional statement where I will return success false and a message about not existing user if the user won't be defined. Okay, when it's done, we can go, and we need to do one thing here because we need to compare the password assigned to the database with the password passed in the credential. But if you remember, we did some operations before we saved the password. That's why right now we need to do the same operations on our input password, the one we've got from login form, to have same values to compare. So let's define our input password and let's do these same operations like crypto. Let's hash it with SHA-256, credentials, password, and let's add user salt as we did it in the previous one. We use string because data from database might have some additional empty spaces, so we don't need it. And digest hex. Cool. Now we can compare the passwords. So let's define the value is password correct. And here we will check if user password, so the one from the database, is the same as input password. If it's not correct, we need to return success false with an information that it's not correct. Okay. And if the password is correct, the last thing that we need to do is to create a response object here. But to that response object, we need to pass accounts, which we didn't got from user, and we have to pass a JVT token. So right now I'm creating the accounts by using non-existing function yet, but we are going to create this get accounts by user ID function in a second in another file. Let's just finish this function right now, and let's also create a new JVT token for that user because we need to return it when user is logged in, so it can be saved on front end. And let's pass the same values as we changed today in the register function, so ID, email, and username. Okay, and now we can define the response object. Inside the response object, we are going to pass user, and inside the user will be ID, username, email, and accounts that we don't have yet. And besides that, outside of the user, we will pass a JVT token and we will pass success true. Okay, now we can go to our account service and we will create this missing function. Let's define it at the bottom. Let's pass user ID as a parameter. And now let's get the accounts from our database, so find all. And our condition will be that where user ID is our user ID param. And then let's change here to small letters so we can reuse it. And here we also can exclude values like created add and updated add. And now we can return. But let's return conditionally, so if accounts will be there, we will return accounts. If not, we will return just an empty array, because our user can kind of exist without accounts. Shouldn't, but can. Okay, and now let's go to user controller and we will create the endpoint for our login. So we are going to use the post method and we will create the endpoint with the end of login. Let's pass credentials as our body. Now let's define the result by calling our login function from user service. Cool, now we can create the conditional statement for the result. If it's not success, we'll return the error, and if it's success, then we will return the response. Pretty similar like the one in the register. Oh, we forgot the parentheses. So let's add them. And now we can test our endpoint. So let's start the backend. And let's open your favorite tool for testing backend. I'm using the Postman, but you can use whatever you prefer. Okay, so my backend is on localhost 300. The endpoint is user login, and we need to pass JSON values. And don't forget that it's post not get. And okay, I have my user. I remember the credentials, so I can use it. If you don't have, then I suggest you to use the register endpoint and create one. And the password. And voila! This is how the response should look like. Let's try with the wrong username. Okay, that works. Let's try with the wrong password. That works as well. Okay, so it seems that login works and we can go to our user authentication right now. So let's go to user service and we will start creating our authenticate function. Let's define it first. And here we will pass two values as a parameters. It will be ID and token, but they won't be passed as a JSON. And inside this function, we need to get the user by the ID that we've got. So we can find one, and also here we can get the user's account because we are able to include them if we have the user ID. So from model accounts, we will need to import those. So let's go on the top and import the accounts entity. Okay. And here we will add the condition. So our user ID is ID, because we don't want other accounts, of course. And it's required, so let's make required true. Cool, we've got our user. And right now we need to decode our token. So let's use JVT verify function and let's pass the token and our key from the env file. Also, let's pass the config for our JVT. And from this function, we will get all those values that we passed to create JVT sign and from which we got the token. So we will get the user ID, and that user ID we need to compare with the ID that we got as a parameter of our authenticate function. If those ID are correct, I mean the same, then user can get the data because the correct user asks for this data. If not, that we should return the information that user is not authenticated to get that data, and we should return success false. Cool. When that's clear, we can return the response and create the response object. Let's do the user, let's pass all those values like before, so ID, email, username, and accounts. Also, let's return the token. And let's return success true. And now we can return the response. Great, so now we can go back to user controller and we can create the endpoint for this one. It's also gonna be a post endpoint, but here we will use two more things. We will use param and we will use headers. And our path will be the ID, so it will be variable. Okay, so public async authenticate, and let's pass param, which we have to import as well. Yeah, it's not here. Then we need a res. And we need headers. We need headers because we are going to pass our authentication token inside the headers, not as a param because of the safety reasons. And we are going to add a barrer before we will pass the header, the authentication token. So now we need to extract the token from what we've got here. So let's define our token right now to pass it as a parameter to the authenticate function. So from headers, authorization, and we need to replace the barrer and the space with empty, and that's how we are going to get our token. Okay, and now let's create the result. We will call our authenticate function from user service, and we are going to pass params ID because we won't be passing ID as a JSON, just as a part of a string. Oh, here's an error. And yeah, we can copy paste this because it's gonna be the same. And here let's just change. Cool. And we are ready for testing. Let's rerun our backend. Let's open Postman or whatever you're using. And what we need right now. So we need the token of our existing user. So I'll log in once again and I'll copy the token. And our user ID is 28. So let's pass it into our path. Let's delete the JSON and let's go to headers, to authorization, barrer, And it works. So it returns as our values, everything is correct. Congratulations!
Congratulations! You've just finished Node.js Course Lesson 4. Now your application has user registration, user login, and user authentication. And in the next video, we are going to create transactions. I hope you are excited as me and can't wait. But to not miss it, remember to subscribe this channel if you don't yet, and to turn on the notifications with the ring bell down there. If you like the video, remember about thumbs up and to leave us a comment. I hope to see you all in the next video. Bye!